Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. Here we are on the 23rd day of December on Friday. We're looking at Christmas weekend. I hope you all are having a wonderful holiday. Articles in this third episode of the trifecta for today. We're going to start off with the NewYorkTimes.com, and it has Obama's 78 pardons and 153 computations extend record of mercy. And just weeks before leaving office, President Obama on Monday issued 78 pardons and commuted the sentences of 153 prisoners, extending his acts of clemency to a total of 1,324 individuals, one of the larger uses of presidential power to show mercy in modern presidential history. 31 people who received a pardon or reduced sentence from Mr. Obama, virtually all had been serving sentences under tough anti-drug laws, including those convicted of low-level nonviolent crimes like possession of cocaine. Pardons had completed their sentence and are, in the words of Neil Eggleston, the White House counsel, now leading productive and law-abiding post-conviction life, including by contributing to the community in a meaningful way. The pardons wipe away any legal liabilities from a conviction. Computations are different. They typically shorten the sentences of people in prison, often by many years, but do not eliminate a conviction or restore rights lost, such as the right to vote. In many cases, the people selected to have their sentences commuted have participated in drug treatment or educational or vocational technology courses while in prison. One example, Anthony Dwayne Gillis of Supply, Virginia, was convicted in 2005 of possessing cocaine, making false statements, and possessing a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking. He was sentenced to 145 years in prison. Of computation reduces the sentence to 20 years. The presidents have the power to commute sentences and pardon people for past acts, but Mr. Obama's use of the power far exceeds many of his predecessors. Grants a president the power to issue pardons for offenses against the United States or to reduce the length of federal sentences in prison. Mr. Obama has commuted the sentences of more than 1,000 people, more than 50 times the number of people whose sentences were commuted by President George W. Bush, and more than the past 11 presidents combined. While White House officials have said that Mr. Obama will continue to review applications for clemency until his final day in office, suggesting that his record will be extended. The president has said, the president has said he has been motivated to exercise his clemency power by a brief that the sentencing system in the United States was used to lock up minor criminals, often minorities, for excessively long periods of time. At the end of 2015, as he commuted the sentence of 95 federal prisoners, Mr. Obama said it was another step forward in upholding our ideals of justice and fairness, and added that if we can show at the federal level that we can be smart on crime, more cost-effective, more just, more proportionate, then we can set a trend for other states to follow as well, and that's our hope. Tens of thousands of inmates, mostly young African American or Hispanic men, were locked up in the effort to combat drug violence during the past 3 decades. And were sentenced under federal guidelines that require them to serve decades or longer in prison. During the past several years, a bipartisan coalition emerged to overhaul that system. The unlikely allies include conservatives like Charles G. and David H. Koch, the Billionaire Brothers, and the Center for American Progress, a liberal advocacy organization with close connections to Hillary Clinton. But hopes for a legislative deal to overhaul the nation's sentencing system failed to materialize during the bitter 2016 presidential campaign that left Mr. Obama with one option: to use his clemency power case by case. The House has published the president's desire to use his clemency power. More than 30,000 convicts applied for relief. That required setting up a process by which Mr. Obama's lawyers could sift through the requests and make recommendations. advocacy groups, including the American Civil Liberties Union, the American Bar Association, and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, formed a consortium called the Clemency Project to help screen applicants. Many law firms joined the effort, assigning lawyers to evaluate the clemency application and bring cases to the White House. Violent offenders, or those who otherwise did not meet the criteria set out by Justice Department, were set aside. Others were forwarded to government lawyers for review and potentially on to the president. It is unclear whether President-elect Donald J. Trump will continue the practice of using pardons and computations to address the sentencing issue. On crime candidate, it seems unlikely. Makers may renew bipartisan efforts to overhaul sentencing laws, which would give new president an opportunity to confront the issue without turning to his clemency power, at least initially. And some presidents, like Mr. Obama, have waited until the end of their presidencies before issuing pardons and making grants of computation. Section to this, it says in an article Tuesday about pardons issued by President Obama erroneously attributed a distinction to his use of clemency during his 2 terms. His decision to pardon or commute the sentences of a total of 1,324 people is one of the largest uses of clemency by a president, not by far the largest. Several presidents exceed that number when both pardons and computations were counted. The article also referred incorrectly to the timing of presidential pardons and computation. Clemency has often been granted throughout presidential terms, not solely at the end of those terms. The issue that I have with this is that we have people like Joe Robertson, 77-year-old veteran that put ponds on his property with permits and then convicted by the federal government for putting those ponds on the property, is sitting in prison, can't even get medical help. He's had stroke symptoms, had to talk to his family on the phone for months. I don't see him getting issued any clemency or even getting medical attention. He's not even allowed to have his medication for his PTSD. What about our political prisoners that's being held in prison without bail pending trial for a non-violent situation? I mean, it's all they were doing was protesting, peaceful protesting. But this is going on. And how much of our tax dollars are being spent on all this lawyer business they've got going on? I mean, let's go over that part again. It says Obama's lawyers could sift through the requests and make recommendations. Okay, so there's more than one lawyer, there's a bunch. And then it goes on and says several advocacy groups, including the American Civil Liberties Union, the American Bar Association, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, formed a consortium called the Clemency Project. Those people are all getting paid, and you can bet it's on your tax dollars. And your tax dollars are also the ones that put these people in jail in the first place. These are federal crimes. And granted, it's your tax dollars that's keeping these people in jail. But the one that they gave the example of up here, let's see, we'll find that up here. Take just a second, I think, to find it. Going through this. I'm not finding it now. Shoot. They gave an example of that one feller. I mean, he had been convicted of trafficking and a weapon in the use of the trafficking. So he's a pusher. You want him back out on the streets peddling drugs to your kids? Holy smoke. Your tax dollars at use. Well, there it is. Anthony Dwayne Gillis of Supply, Virginia, was convicted in 2005 of possessing cocaine, making false statements, and possessing a firearm in the furtherance of drug trafficking. And his sentence is reduced from 145 years to 20 years. It doesn't say how long he's been. Well, let's see. He was convicted in 2005. So let's see. That would be 20 years is 2025. So yeah, he's got a little ways to go yet before he gets out. 9 more years. If you got any little 9 more years, they'd be 9, 10, maybe even 12 years old. And this goofball's going to be back out on the street peddling drugs again. I'm with it. You're welcome to leave comments on what you think about it in the description of the video. I have for you is off of BizPack Review, and it says new poll shows even Dems are done with Hillary. I got the biggest chuckle out of this, and I knew that my listeners would enjoy this as well. It says former 2016 Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton may have won the popular vote, but the vast majority of voters said they don't want to see her run again. First, the USA Today poll released Wednesday found. Independents and Democrats surveyed, a whopping 62% of the voters said she shouldn't run in 2020, faring much worse than her primary challenger, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who had just 38% saying he should opt out. Just 23% said they were excited about the thought of her running again after President-elect Donald Trump won by landslide in a surprise upset. 44% of Democrats and independent voters said they would be excited about Vice President Joe Biden or Sanders to run, while 66% said they would like to see someone entirely new. Clinton's favorability rating remains low, with 42% saying they have a positive outlook and 55% saying they have an unfavorable view. Say they have a favorable opinion of Trump, while just 46% say they have an unfavorable view. The survey was conducted with a sample of 1,000 voters from December the 14th to December the 18th via landlines and cell phones, and reports a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points. The next one I have, this is off BizPack Review. It says Hillary lands on GQ's list of least influential people, along with some interesting company. Got kicked to the curb at a time when she's down and out. She went from the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States to the GQ list of least influential people in America. Clinton shares her honor with such luminaries as Anthony Weiner, Billy Bush, Tim Kaine, and even the hashtag Never Trump Brigade. The list was described as a comprehensive anger-fueled list of everyone who's ruined our year, and the author included Clinton for losing to Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump, he wrote. I genuinely doubt that man can tie his own shoelaces, and he still beat her. Those who were and still are all in with Hillary took exception. And there is a list of tweets here that are hilarious. One says, that's just rude. Can't people just leave her alone? Another one says, obviously Putin hacked GQ. So you can pull that up. All these URLs are in the description of the video for your amusement and entertainment. The next one is off of BizPack Review. Up either. Snopes exposed fact-checking website co-founder accused of embezzling money for prostitutes. Can't make this stuff up. Rumor has it that Snopes is in big trouble. The co-founder of Snopes, one of the 4 fact-checking organizations that Facebook will use to suss out fake news, allegedly embezzled money from the website to pay for hookers. David Mickelson, who co-founded Snopes with his ex-wife Barbara Mickelson, is accused of stealing $98,000 in company funds to spend it on himself and the prostitutes he hired, according to legal documents filed by Barbara and reviewed by the Daily Mail. In response, David claims Barbara stole millions from their joint bank account. This is the duo that liberal mainstream media have relied on for years to debunk rumors and fake news. The Mickelsons co-founded Snopes in 1995 after meeting a themed message board. The couple used a fake letterhead calling themselves the San Fernando Valley Folklore Society, an organization that never existed, to make their two-person operation sound more official. When I sent letters out to companies, I found I got a much better response with an official-looking organization's stationery, David Mickelson told the Los Angeles Times in 1997. The Mickelsons divorced in 2015, but not amicably. Shortly after the divorce, David married Alyssa Young, who also uses the alias Aaron O'Brien. Alyssa, a current escort and former porn star, works for Snopes as an administrator, according to the Daily Mail. And there's a picture of her in this if you want to take a look at it. It says Snopes top fact checker Kim LaCapria has admitted on her personal blog that she has posted to Snopes after smoking marijuana, the Mail reported. While none of these accusations, smoking weed at work, embezzling company funds, or being a porn star escort in itself per se, the fact that all three are occurring at the same website that holds itself out as the arbitrator of truth is laughable. Snopes is widely known to be extremely liberal and has repeatedly been called out for its leftist bias and factual errors. The Daily Caller noted the following. It says, Snopes almost exclusively employs leftists as fact checkers, many of whom have exhibited a clear distaste for Republican voters. The Daily Caller could not identify a simple Snopes fact checker who comes from a conservative background. In July, the DC exposed a Snopes lie about the lack of American flags at the Democratic convention, trying to pass off a picture from day 2 of the convention as though it were from day 1, in a failing attempt to debunk a factual Daily Caller story. Similarly, a Snopes attempt at discrediting a news story from the Daily Caller News Foundation earlier this month was riddled with factual errors and omissions. While the fake news is a real problem, Facebook's elevation of Snopes and other dubious liberal fact checkers to weed out so-called fake news is being slammed as a way to delegitimize conservative viewpoints. Of course, the jokes on them as mainstream press pushed to silence conservative views has only resulted in the public losing faith in them. A recent poll showed that 94% of the public say they do not trust the media. The next article I have for you is off of naturalnews.com. It says Albuquerque Police Department to start manufacturing crack cocaine so they can arrest the people they sell it to. When big government goes off the rails, it's almost like they're smoking crack. In this case, that's not far from the truth. The Albuquerque Police Department now plans to manufacture crack cocaine so they can sell it to people who are then arrested for possession of crack. It's below in this article that you can pull up and take a look at to see this. And the article goes on and says, wait a second. Illegal substance, right? So now the police are going to possess it, manufacture it, and sell it, and then arrest citizens who buy it from them? Yep, that's how some police tell themselves they are the good guys when they manufacture crack cocaine to sell to the bad guys who were making the crack cocaine before the police started making it. In other words, the Albuquerque Police Department will now be engaged in manufacture and distribution of Schedule I controlled substances, meaning it's no longer deniable that the cops are the drug dealers. Open. The story first broke on the burkemedia.com, which explains an affidavit obtained by Burke Media from a confidential source spells out plans by the Albuquerque Police Department to go after low-level drug users in a reverse buy-bust operation. Bust, undercover agents sell drugs to citizens and then arrest them for possession. Part of that operation involves APD manufacturing crack cocaine from powdered cocaine. Writing this story for Natural News, the affidavit and motion to release evidence document was removed from Scribd. Screenshots below, grabbed before the document was memory hold. It says, the state of New Mexico, through its assistant district attorney and affiant detective Mark Klingenpeel, and hereby request the court's order to allow detectives to obtain heroin, methamphetamines, cocaine base, commonly referred to as crack, and or cocaine from the Albuquerque Police Department Evidence Unit for the purpose of an undercover operation as set below in quantities listed in order. Powdered cocaine may be taken into the APD's criminalistic unit to be made into crack cocaine. The Albuquerque Police Department's narcotics unit will use the heroin, methamphetamine, crack cocaine, and or cocaine to sell to individuals who are seeking to purchase drugs within the city of Albuquerque. The article continues below these documents, and you can scroll down in this to take a look at it. It's 4 pages long. And then this article goes on, and it says, nodding or shrugging the shoulders to ensnare citizens and charge them with felony drug possession. As part of the APD's manufacture and distribution of crack cocaine, they're planning on ensnaring citizens by using what they call gestures that are commonly used in the area to make contact with someone for the purpose of purchasing drugs. These gestures include nodding and shrugging the shoulders, meaning if you simply nod at one of these undercover APD crack dealers, you could be just moments away from being arrested and charged with attempting to purchase crack. After a nod or shoulder shrug, the person will be escorted to a discreet location, says the document. The detectives will sell the person the requested amount of drugs, it explains, after which the person will be arrested and charged with felony possession of a controlled substance. You mean the same substance the police just manufactured and sold them? Gosh, and during what part of this elaborate operation did these detectives just pocket the cash and let a few buyers walk? Oops, looks like a few kilos of crack never made it back to the evidence locker. Strange how that happens. When cops become drug manufacturers and street dealers, something has gone terribly wrong with the failed war on drugs. Now you see, the police are making the drugs, dealing the drugs, and potentially profiting from the drugs. It won't be long before the APD finds that it needs to plug the revenue shortfall with some extra cash. And what do you know? Hundreds of citizens are lining up just to hand them cash for their self-manufactured crack cocaine. The temptation for abuse in this racket's too juicy to ignore. When a detective can make more untraceable cash profit in a single week than they might pull in an entire year on the city's payroll, it's not difficult to imagine some of these cops going freelance. And if you have a police-run operation that can manufacture crack cocaine, sell it to people on the street, then arrest those people for buying the very same illegal substance the police department is manufacturing, just how long will it be before fringe police departments start running sex slave rings in order to sell slaves to buyers who are promptly arrested? And here's a hint for you. It's already going on. The cover-up is intense because the customers of such activities often tend to be among the political elite. What can you do about this? Well, for starters, don't buy crack cocaine. More importantly, if you live in Albuquerque, don't nod or shrug at anybody on the street, or you may find yourself dragged into a dark alley by undercover cops who claim you signaled them with an intent to purchase illegal drugs. If they persist, just tell them you aren't interested in cocaine. You were actually hoping to buy good time and you thought the undercover cops were transgender prostitutes. That should work amazingly well. Try it yourself and see. The next one I have for you is off of Brigaded, and it's this is a little more serious. This is aggressive man chases down Ivanka Trump and her children on a flight. Matthew Lasner and husband Daniel Goldstein tracked down, chased, and verbally abused Ivanka Trump as her 3 little kids watched in horror. We've learned during this election, when Democrats don't get their way, they tend to go to extremes. In this case, Dan Goldstein, a Brooklyn attorney, and his husband, Matthew Lasner, a professor at Hunter College, went to the extreme. The couple got word that President-elect's daughter would also be on their flight, and then they dashed to the scene and began verbally abusing Ivanka Trump, her husband, and 3 children who watched in horror. While the aggressive verbal abuse took place, Ivanka paid zero attention and tried to preoccupy her children as the abuse was happening. The crew eventually forced the couple off the flight. There's a lot of comments below this if you want to pull this one up and take a look at what's going on with all of that. The next one we have here is off of the Washington Post. Mississippi church member charged in Vote Trump arson. A Mississippi man with prior criminal record was arrested Wednesday in the burning of an African-American church that spray painted with the words "Vote Trump," and the church's bishop said the man is a member of the congregation. The state fire marshal said investigators do not believe the fire was politically motivated. Andrew McClinton, age 45, of Leland, Mississippi, is scheduled to make an initial court appearance Thursday in Greenville, the city where Hopewell Missionary Baptist Church was burned and vandalized November the 1st, a week before the presidential election. McClinton is charged with first-degree arson of a place of worship, said Warren Strain, spokesman for the Mississippi Department of Public Safety. Hopewell Bishop Clarence Green said McClinton, who is African-American, is a member of the church. Green said he didn't know about the arrest until he was called by the Associated Press. "This is the first I've heard of it," said Green, who said he was attending to other church duties and didn't have time for a long interview. It was not immediately clear whether McClinton was represented by an attorney. The investigation is continuing and officials have not revealed a possible motive. "We do not believe it was politically motivated. There may have been some efforts to make it appear politically motivated," Mississippi Insurance Commissioner Mike Chaney, who is also the fire marshal, told the AP. Mississippi Department of Corrections record shows that McClinton was sentenced in 1991 to 3 years probation for a grand larceny conviction in Washington County, where Greenville is the county seat. His probation was revoked in 1992 for receiving stolen property in Greenville. The Department of Corrections spokeswoman Grace Simmons Fisher said. In 1997, McClinton was sentenced to 7 years for attempted robbery in Lee County, and in 2004, he was convicted of armed robbery in Lee County. He served 8 years in prison and was released in January of 2012. His time served included days he was jailed before trial. Greenville is a Mississippi River port city of about 32,100 people. About 78% of its residents are African American. While it's not unusual for people of different racial backgrounds to work and eat lunch together, local residents say the congregations at most churches remain clearly identifiable by race. Greenville Mayor Eric D. Simmons on Wednesday called the church burning a direct assault on the Hopewell congregation's right to freely worship. "There is no place for this heinous and decisive behavior in our city," Simmons said. "We will not rest until the culprit is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We take pride in our work and have a unified city, and we look forward in continuing that work." In 1905, in the heart of an African-American neighborhood, and the congregation now has about 200 members. While some walls of the beige brick church survived the fire, the empty windows are boarded up, and the church leaders have said the structure will likely be razed. Rebuilding could take months. After the fire, Hopewell congregants began worshiping in a chapel at predominantly white First Baptist Church of Greenville. Bishop Green said last month the generosity of the First Baptist demonstrates that unlimited love transcends social barriers. James Nichols, senior pastor at First Baptist, said the Hopewell members are welcome to stay as long as they need a home. Greenville is in Washington County, a traditional Democratic stronghold in solidly Republican state. For 8th presidential election, Republican Donald Trump easily carried Mississippi, but Democrat Hillary Clinton received more than twice the vote of Trump in Washington County. 11,380 for Clinton and 5,244 for Trump. And the final article that I have for you today in this one is off of WND.com. And I'm waiting for the hamster to fling it up here on the page for me. He's running slow today. Bless his little heart. There we go. College calls Christian speech disorderly conduct and gets sued. Says a Christian student prevented from sharing his faith due to restrictive and subjectively applied free speech rules at Georgia Gwinnett College has filed a 76-page lawsuit against 11 unnamed. Well, now it's going to jump on me. Wait a minute. Poor little hamster. He needs some coffee. Okay. Against 11 named college officials. Guarantees every student freedom of speech and religion. Every public school, and especially a state college that's supposed to be a place of ideas, has the duty to protect and promote those freedoms, said the ADF legal counsel, Travis Barnum, representing the student Chike, and I don't know how to pronounce this guy's last name. I think I'm guessing here. It's about a 75-cent last name, big old long one. Says in the matter. Okay. Students don't check their constitutionally protected free speech at the campus gate while touting comments and open communications. Georgia Gwinnett College confines the speech of students to 2 ridiculously small speech and then censors the speech that occurs in those areas. Zubunum first ran afoul of GGC's policy when he attempted to hand out literature and speak with willing listeners about his evangelical faith on the plaza in front of the campus library. Despite positioning himself so as to not interfere with foot traffic, he was stopped by college officials who informed him that any such activity on campus required a permit. He was also told he would need a permit to approach anyone to privately share his faith. The college's only exceptions are 2 restricted free speech zones comprising just 0.0015% of the 260-acre campus. Even here, students must submit any materials they wish to display or hand out 3 days in advance and are restricted to use the zones only once every 30 days. The zones are only available to use 18 hours per week. Zubunum complied with the rules, seeking and receiving permission in August to share his faith in one of the restricted zones. However, 20 minutes later, a campus police officer ordered him to stop because he had received complaints. People are calling us because their peace and tranquility is being disturbed, and we've asked you to stop, a second officer on the scene informed Zubunum. Despite other speakers having been allowed by GGC to use amplified sound both inside and outside the restricted zone, some using offensive language and vulgar, lewd, and obscene music without interference. Zubunum was threatened with a charge of disorderly conduct and forced to leave. He was told he should share his faith more like a member of the Latter-day Saints who engage in one-on-one hypothesizing on campus. Upon checking with the campus office that gave him permission to speak, Zubunum was informed that it was a violation of GGC's policy for anyone to express a fire and brimstone message on campus, even within the speech zones. It was unclear how such a message would be legal, even if shared one-on-one under the school speech code, especially since disorderly conduct is defined as any expression which disturbs the peace and or comfort of persons. Today's college students will be tomorrow's legislatures, judges, commissioners, and voters, said ADF Senior Counsel Casey Maddox. That's why it's so important that public universities model the First Amendment values they are supposed to be teaching to students, and why it should disturb everyone that GGC and many other colleges are communicating to a generation that the Constitution doesn't matter. I have issues with this because here's what I'm wondering, and you're all welcome to leave your comments about this on this video, but there's obviously a board at the college that came up with this, small little minute free speech zone area that they confine these people to, and them having to get permits and being censored and all such stuff as that. Who exactly, I would love to know, came up with this idea to push off on these students? You know that colleges get federal funding. Is this some kind of a federal social experiment with these colleges to indoctrinate these college students for this new agenda? I mean, just exactly where did all of this censorship and stuff come from? This anti-constitutional stuff that they got going here. Just a thought. I'd love to know the answer to that one. And that's all I have for you in today's episode. I may come up with some stuff over the weekend, even though it's Christmas weekend, because it'll just be me and Fred, the co-host cockatiel, and the canaries and my dogs to do the holiday here. So, you know, I'll be watching the internet some. And if I see any breaking news or get anything good for a special edition, I'll be putting it out there. If you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up. Share it so that people get the real news. Subscribe if you haven't already. Click that little bell beside the subscribe button and check that box, and you'll get email alerts on when I put shows up so that you get the news right away. And that'll keep you informed on what's going on. And I hope you have an absolutely wonderful holiday. I wish you all the best, and we'll see you in the next episode.